Hi, I'm Michael with GoProPix.com, and we're here today on location to learn how to draw a floor plan. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over the tools that you need while you're doing the floor plans. One of the very first things that you need to get is a laser measure. The one that I have is made by Stanley and it's called FAT, F-A-T, Max, M-A-X. It works extremely well, and there's others out there on the market, but this is a good one that I've used. Obviously, the second thing that we need is a couple pencils sharpened. The next is, you can use any kind of straight edge, but I use a flexible ruler straight edge when I'm drawing on the graph paper. Then we have two choices. This is just a choice of preference. This is 5mm graph paper, and then the other size is 1/8. This is what I prefer to draw a floor plan on. I like the smaller squares. When you are drawing the floor plan, you have a choice of using the squares and relating it to scale of 1 foot when you're actually measuring and drawing the floor plan out. Typically, when I get in and draw a floor plan, I'll write the address of the property on the graph paper. I'll usually put a number 1 for the first floor and circle it. And that way I have an idea when I get back home to do the post-processing, if you're doing several properties in a day and they get mixed up, it's real easy to get your floors and everything mixed up. So that way you keep it in order. And the last tool is also something to draw on. I use this because it has a little storage case and I'm able to keep my pencils, sharpener, and extra graph paper in there. It's also got a little calculator on it. And I'm able to sit there and walk through and draw on a hard surface as I'm drawing the floor plan. What we're going to do right now is we're going to show you how the laser measure works real quick as far as capturing measurements. It's basically bouncing a light beam, a laser beam, and comes back and reads it, and that'll tell us the distance from one wall to the other. We start by basically hitting the red button to capture, place it on the wall, and make sure that it's flush. And then you'll see the laser beam sitting on the other wall. I hit the red button again, and it comes back saying 8 feet 6 inches. And that's what I'm going to document from this wall to that wall. Okay, we're outside right now because it's really important to actually walk the perimeter of the home that you're getting ready to draw the floor plan on. And the reason why is because you have pop-outs on the home that actually pop out that sometimes you may not be able to see or notice when you're drawing the floor plan from the inside. As you come down the side, you want to make sure that it's flat, that there's no pop out there, so we're good here. We'll go over here, and right now you can see that we have two pop outs up above. One sticks out a little bit further than the other upstairs, so we'll address that when we're drawing on the inside. We also have another pop out right here that's coming out, and one of the things that I like to do if I'm able to is I'll look in the window to see which room this is, so that as I'm drawing I take a mental note or I write it down on my graph paper that I notice that this is coming out, so that when I go to draw it I'm able to address that as I'm drawing the floor plan. Another thing is we see that the door is actually sunk in compared to the wall that is flush with the garage, and then we have the little pop out right here. When we come down this side, it's totally flush. We'll walk to the back right now and check the back wall. As we come down here, we see one pop out which has a vent on it, which tells me that more than likely that's the fireplace popping out off the back wall. And that's pretty much the perimeter walk. Okay, after we have walked the perimeter and are inside, I usually start, as a personal preference, in the garage, and I draw myself out of here. You can always start at any point that is the furthest corner point of a home, whether it's inside or in the garage. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a measurement, and I go over and I scan and get my first measurement, which is a typical garage width size, which is 19 feet 1 inches. Then I come over here and I get the length, which is 19 feet 5 inches. After I get those measurements, I draw that out on the graph paper. Okay, after you've taken your measurements of the room and you've drawn basically the layout of the room and taken notice of any walls that are not typically square, like this one right here, we have a wall that is in an angle. We want to note that as we're drawing the layout or the shape of this room, this particular room, which is a 2-car garage. After you've drawn and measured the room, you want to make sure that you put those measurements on your graph paper and that you also label what this room is, which is a 2-car garage. Okay, before we go to the next room, I want to show you what is actually drawn on my graph paper of this room, which is the 2-car garage, which is labeled. We've got the swing of the door, which is over there. I've also got the angle of the wall, and I'm showing, and this is how I illustrate a hot water heater by a 0 or a circle with an X on it, and that we also have the furnace over there that is located on that wall as well. Then I typically, for the garage door, if it's a big long one, I draw a little door line like that to let me know that that is one big garage door. Sometimes you'll have homes that may have 2 little ones, so you'll have 2 separate lines there drawn for illustrating that, you know, you have 2 separate garage doors, or it could be one big one and a little one for a 3-car garage. Then I have my measurements located. You can either, if you have the room, you can put them on the inside, but typically I like to draw them on the outside to try to keep it as clean as possible. But periodically when you're inside, you may have to draw a measurement that's on the inside of the floor plan. Okay, now we're in the kitchen, and basically you want to take note of what makes this room different from the other rooms. And one, we want to look at it that we have the shape of the counters going this way. We want to note on the graph paper the position of the fridge, the stove, the sink, and the window off of there. The next thing that I do is I usually, because there's no defined wall here, is I'll come to the end of the counter and I'll take a scan and document, which is 11 feet. And that gives me the width of the kitchen, and then I'll come over to this wall, do a quick scan, and it's 12 feet. So we know that the kitchen is basically 11 by 12. And then that way, when I document that on here, I'll have that. And then one of the things that I will do, because this room runs into the next one, is I'll also do a full out scan and measurement from this wall to the living room, which is next. Now that we've drawn the kitchen, we're going into the room that's attached to the kitchen. And the first thing that we come to is this window. And what I do is I will show you later how I illustrate a window on a floor plan, but the main and important thing is you want to see how this is positioned in the room. And when I draw it, I look at the window and I notice that it's pretty much in the center of the stairway that's heading upstairs. So I will document that on the floor plan. And then this window is a little bit bigger than the one that we just drawn in the kitchen. And I do that by putting 2 little circles on the sides of it, so I have an idea of what size that I'm going to draw on the post side when I create this and turn it into a JPEG. The next thing that we have that makes this room unique is this beautiful fireplace, and we're going to draw that on here. And if you remember, when we walked the perimeter of the property, this had a pop out on the back side, so we also want to illustrate that on the floor plan. The last thing that we have, which is off of the living room here, is this sliding double door, glass door going out to the patio. We will also illustrate that on the room to show the type of door that's here. Okay, the next thing that we have, after we've finished drawing the bottom floor, if you have enough room, typically I like to start on a new piece of graph paper and label it number 2 so that I know that I'm going up to the 2nd floor. The way that I have a relationship, the one item that is the same between the top floor and the bottom floor is the stairway. It's actually a room, if you want to look at it, transitioning from one floor to the next. This particular home has a very interesting stairway. The stairs actually sort of curve around that wall that we had out on the garage. But what we do know is that this wall here is perpendicular with the wall on the garage coming in from that door. I take a note of how these stairs sort of are drawn on here, and if you notice, this wall is perpendicular with that wall is perpendicular with that slant wall that we had in the garage, and then it turns and goes up there, and then that wall will be perpendicular with that one. So the last thing that I also notice on here is if you look at this stair here, it's totally flush, and then we have all of a sudden two angled ones, and then it goes flush, two angled ones, and then flush. So that right there sort of tells me that these walls are perpendicular to each other and it flows that way. This is really important because a lot of people have difficulty with the stairs. So you want to make sure that you get the stairs correct, draw them on your floor plan, and then on the second sheet when you're starting the new one, make sure it doesn't have to match perfectly because this is being illustrated, and you'll see how on the post side you can correct anything that you may have had a problem with on the site or location. Okay, now that we're at the top of the second floor here, the common denominator between the first floor and the second floor is obviously the stairway. So when we start with our new graph paper and we've put number 2 for the second floor, the very first thing that I like to draw is I like to draw the stairway again, matching the one that I have on the first floor. And then I come up and I get the next room that's attached, which if you remember when we were walking outside, this was one of the pop-outs that we had as we were looking at the perimeter of the property. One of the things as you look out the window is you can see that the top level, this wall that's coming out here, this pop-out, is actually sitting back from the perimeter wall that is down on the first floor. So taking note of that, you want to make sure you illustrate that and capture that when you're drawing. Okay, we are in the room coming off of the stairs there. There was that landing, and now we're into the master. One of the very first things that I noticed as I was coming into the master bedroom is that this wall pops out right here on the entryway. Well, if you come on the other side, you notice that this is flush. So this would make you think that this is dead space. But if you remember when we were drawing the garage down below where the furnace was, a lot of times they create these little pop-outs in the room and they have the furnace and the ducts all going through there. So when you're drawing it, make sure that you do capture this angle and this space that's right here. The next thing that I noticed was this was the other pop-out that actually sits back a little bit from that other pop-out on the landing. We are definitely further back from the perimeter line that was down on the first floor. So this is something else that we want to take note, and how this is centered with the window in there. And then as we come over to the walk-in closet, we want to just quickly scan, get the measurements, draw that, which, you know, the doorway that's coming in off of that, and how the door swings. Which then obviously in a master bedroom also has a master bath. Okay, on the master bathroom, which is typically the biggest bathroom in the house, we just want to get a general dimension measurement of how this lays out. So we will scan one wall here and usually go to the tub and scan that, and you get the total size of the master bathroom. The next thing after we do that is we want to note, okay, there's a closet in here. We have this counter with dual sinks. We're going to illustrate that on the floor plan. We also want to look at which direction the tub is facing. All of the faucets and everything are on this side, so we put the tub facing that way, and we illustrate that on the floor plan that we're drawing. This also has another window in here, so we also want to pick that up. There's a doorway here that swings open, and the toilet is located right there. Okay, now we're in one of the bedrooms, which is attached to the master bedroom and bathroom that we had just drawn. If you notice when you come in here, we've got sort of some funky walls going on here that we're going to illustrate on the floor plan. And then as we come over here, we know because we had just drawn the master bedroom and that walk-in closet is located right here. We can always double check, walk back over there and make sure that this is that wall. As you come in, I typically don't measure unless it's a pretty good sized closet. I don't measure these. I just illustrate that this is a rectangular shape. And we do know because we had just drawn the master bath and that the toilet was basically right in this area. Knowing that when you come over to this wall, which was the back wall or perimeter wall of the home, this was totally flush, whereas on the front, it was pulled back a little bit on the second level. Then we come over and we take note that the window is pretty much centered. We make our marking on the floor plan, and that is it.